So we have completed the base case NPV and we got 1,060,000 naira. So the next thing we need to do now is to solve the PV or financing effects cash flow. All right. So in determining the present value of financing effects cash flow, I explained to you last time that there are three components that will make up the financing effect cash flow. One is the present value of issue cost. Two, present value of net subsidy. Three, the present value of tax saved on interest. However, it is not compulsory that in a question that you are going to see the three of them. What is important is that anyone you have, just go ahead and calculate the PV of the financing. All right. So, and I also mentioned to you that in the calculation of present value of financing effect cash flow, you are going to make some assumptions before you start calculating the PV of financing effect. One assumption is that you must agree ab initio from the beginning how you want to calculate your financing effect cash flow. Do you want to use net finance required, or you want to use the gross finance required? So you must agree on what you want to do from the beginning. Then two, you must ascertain the discount rate to be used for financing effect cash flow. Miller and Modigliani are the one that developed the adjusted present value, but they failed to tell us the discount rate to be used for discounting the cash flow arising from financing effects. Therefore, you are at a liberty to either assume risk-free rate of return or cost of borrowing. Your cost of borrowing is interest rates from external financing, all right? And also, I now advise you that it is important, at all time, always assume the cost of borrowing as a discount rate for the financing effect cash flow, because cost of borrowing is usually higher than the risk-free rate of return. So it's better for you to use cost of borrowing for the financing effect cash flow. So, and what is important is that at all time, you have to state your assumption. Whatever you have done in the question, you are expected to state your assumption. One, you can say that, okay, gross finance required is assumed for the cash flow arising from net subsidy and the tax saved on interest. Two, cost of borrowing is used for discounting the cash flow arising from the financing effects. That's that. So you just have to state your assumption so that the examiner will know your position. So without wasting more time, let's quickly go through this question together. We have read the question last time, but we can do it again. All right, so that we'll be on the same page. Okay. Let me see. I don't know what happened. Prosper and Debbie are not around, including Zainab. Okay, then let's move on. So we want to determine PV on financing effects cash flow. When you want to calculate the PV of financing effect cash flow, after you have read the question A to Z, so of course you have to underline, you have to identify the areas where you have the variable that you are looking for. In this particular question, in the first paragraph, examiner mentioned that the government is excited about the project and has offered AHEL a subsidized loan of up to 80%. Okay, let me just go through the question once and for all. Yes, Alcantara Limited is an unlisted company based in Akure, Nigeria. Over the years, the company has been producing and selling agricultural support tools. AHEL is now considering the production and sale of yam pandas. Although this is a completely new venture for AHEL, it will be in addition to the company's core business. AHEL's director plans to develop the project for a period of 4 years and then sell it for 24 million naira to a group of young investors. The government is excited about the project and has offered AHEL a subsidized loan of up to 80% of the funds required at the beginning of the project at a rate of 200 basis points below AS borrowing rates. So I've seen subsidized loan here. So here is a subsidized loan. Okay. I'll underline that so that when I want to calculate PV of net subsidy, I will know where to go. Okay. Currently, AHEL can borrow at 300 basis points above the 5-year government debt yield rates. Okay. So this is where I'm going to see information on cost of borrowing, normal borrowing rates. Here I can see information on normal borrowing rates. Then these 200 basis points, we are told that at a rate of 200 basis points below AS borrowing rates. On this paragraph, I can see interest rate on subsidy, that's subsidy rates, 200 basis points below borrowing rates. Borrowing rate is 300 basis points. So subsidy rates is below the normal borrowing rates by 200 basis points. All right. The feasibility study commissioned by the directors at a cost of 5 million naira has produced the following information. We have read all of this before. I don't need anything to do with this. These are the base case NPV. We have done with all of that. We have done with all this information. I don't need to do it again. So I'm looking for information on the PV of some financing effects. All right, all this information we have used previously to calculate the base case NPV. Okay. So we're now told in this paragraph that AL uses 12%. AL uses 12% as is discount rate for the new projects, but feels that this rate may not be appropriate for these new types of investments. It intends to raise the full amount of funds through debt finance and take advantage of the government's offer of subsidized loan. So what I mean is that whatever this company wants to raise will be through debt finance as well as a subsidized loan. So no equity financing. All right. So issue costs are 4% of the gross finance required. I've seen information on issue cost here also. So here is issue cost. Let me write it out in full. Issue cost information is on that paragraph. Okay. Although no other companies produce yam pandas in the country, Cantona PLC produces cassava crushing machines. I don't need that information for for calculating my PV of financing effects. So I've seen issue cost. I've seen subsidized loan. Okay. I've seen information on subsidy is here. Therefore, I don't need to be reading what we have read before. I don't need all those information for anything. So all I need to do now is to calculate my PV of financing effects. So in that case, let me switch to the working notes. Okay. Let me know if you can see the notes. Can you see the notes? Can you see the notes?
Yes, I can see, sir.
All right. Prosper, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
So this is what we got last time when we solved the base case NPV. All right. Okay. Let me see. I don't know why my pen is not connecting. Why is it way out? Okay. Let me show. Sorry, my pen is not connecting. Let me reshare again. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Let me go back. Yeah. Sorry, my pen was not connecting before to the file, so it's working now. Okay. So I've already done all the explanation on how to calculate present value of financing effect. So what we want to do now is to calculate the present value of issue costs, present value of net subsidy, then present value of tax saved on interest. All right, because we have the three of them in this question. So quickly, without wasting more time, let's do that. Let me see if I can increase to 140. Yeah. Okay. So calculating PV of financing effects. How do you do this? You are going to calculate your PV of financing effect in stages. Stage one, we go into the question. You go and check. Are you given issue costs? Yes. As far as this question is concerned, we have issue costs. All right. So if you have issue costs, there are three steps that you are going to carry out. The first step is for you to calculate the issue cost amount. Then step two, you calculate the present value of issue cost in year zero. When you want to calculate the present value of issue cost, you go into the question, how is the project going to be financed? Are you going to raise equity and debts or just only debts and subsidized loan? So if you are going to raise equity and debts, you are going to calculate issue cost amount on equity. You calculate issue cost amount on the debt. You divide it by the 1 minus the issue cost rate. So to gross it to have a gross amount. Once that is done, then move to step two. Step two is to calculate the PV of issue cost. the PV of issue cost in year 0 will be the same thing as your issue cost amount, because discount factor at year 0 is equal to 1. Then third step is for you to calculate the PV of tax saved on issue cost in year 1 only. And I also explained to you that only debts as tax relieved in year 1 on issue cost amount. There is no tax relieved on issue cost amount on equity capital. Only debts as tax relieved on issued cost. All right. So if that is the case, I will then go ahead to say, remember what I told you. Before you begin to calculate anything under the present value of financing effect, you must ascertain from the beginning whether you want to use the gross finance required or net finance required. So at all time, always use the gross finance required except examiner says otherwise. Okay, always use the gross finance required. Then 2, you need to ascertain the cost of capital or the discount rate to be used for financing effect. Therefore, I would then say note net finance required equal to the initial outlay plus working capital. Remember my explanation to you. It is assumed that this finance will be used. The loan that the company wants to borrow will be used to finance the initial investments as well as the working capital in year 1. Our assumption is that the cash flow to be generated by the project will be financed. I mean, the working capital, the subsequent working capital will be financed with the cash flow generated or to be generated by the project. So if that is the case, what is my net finance required? I will then go to the question, how much is my initial outlay? We've already done this. Initial outlay is 21,000. Then working capital is 731. So go and add the two together. Initial outlay 21,000. Working capital 731,000. When you add them together, our net finance required will then be equal to 21,731. Remember, our figures are in thousands. Okay? So that is net finance required. Again, I need to calculate the gross finance required. Gross finance required. The gross finance required is the net finance required divided by 1 minus issue cost rates. Net finance required divided by 1 minus issue cost rates. The net finance required is 21,731. Let's go back to the question. How much is issue cost rates? Go to where you have information on issue costs. We are told that issue costs are 4% of the gross finance required. Issue cost is 4%. Therefore, I would then say 1 minus 0.04. Therefore, 21,731 divided by 0.96. So this will give me 22,636. Okay? That's 22,636. Okay? So now that we have determined the gross finance required, the next thing we need to do is to ascertain the discount rate to be used for financing effect cash flow. So then the second note is discount rates. I would then say normal borrowing rates, normal borrowing rates, NBR. Normal borrowing rate simply means interest rate the company will pay if you want for external financing. If the company wants to borrow from the bank, for example, the interest rate the company will pay is the normal borrowing rate. That's the cost of borrowing. Therefore, I would then say normal borrowing rates equal to, I will go to the question. How am I going to, what interest rate are we paying on the normal borrowing rate? I identified it in the question. If you go to paragraph number 2, that's where we have the information, the last statement there. You are told that AHEL can borrow at 300 basis points above the 5-year government debt yield rate. Government debt yield rate is the risk-free rate of return. And we know, according to this question, the risk-free rate of return is 4.5%. Okay, the risk-free rate of return is 4.5%. Therefore, 300 basis points above 4.5%, meaning that 300 basis points plus 4.5. So I would then say 4.5%, which is the risk-free rate of return, plus 300 basis points. A basis point is just a spread above or below the normal borrowing rates. In this case, whenever you are given a basis point, always divide it by 100. All right, you divide it by 100, is in percentage. So divide it by 100. So in this case, my normal borrowing rate will be 4.5% plus 3% equal to 7.5%. All right. So our assumption is that we want to use the normal borrowing rate to discount the cash flow arising from financing effects. Okay. So if that is the case, we can then go ahead to calculating the PV of issue cost. So I would then say calculating PV of issue cost. PV of issue cost. So examiner has told us in the question that the amount that this company wants, the amount that the company wants to borrow, the 21,731,000 naira, will be financed through debt and subsidized loans. So there's no equity capital that will be raised. Therefore, when you want to calculate the PV of issue costs, the first thing you need to do is to determine the issue cost amount. First step, issue cost amount ICA. The issue cost amount is calculated as the gross finance required multiplied by issue cost rates. So if in the question, you are told that the finance required by the company will be through equity and debt, therefore you are going to calculate issue cost amount on equity. You're also going to calculate issue cost amount on the debt. But in this question, examiner has told us that only debt and subsidized loan will be used to finance the project. Therefore, the gross finance required is 22,636. Issue cost rate is 4%. Let me go to the next line. Equal 22,636 multiplied by 4%. What do you have? Prosper. 22,636 multiplied by 4%. What do you have, please?
9.5.
905.
905.
905 is the issue cost amount. Okay? It's a cost, must be in brackets. So the second step is to calculate the issue cost, PV of the issue cost. So you calculate present value of issue cost amount, which is equal to issue cost amount multiplied by discount factor at year 0, discount factor of, we have assumed that we want to use the normal borrowing rates to discount the cash flow arising from financing. Therefore, discount factor of 7.5% for year 0 or at year 0. equal. Issue cost amount is 905. Multiplied by discount factor in year 0 at 7.5%. So which is 1. So this will give me 905. Keep it on one side. The final step is to calculate the PV of tax saved on issue cost amounts in year 1 only. How do you do this? PV will be calculated as issue cost amounts multiplied by company tax rates, then multiplied by discount factor of 7.5% at year 1. Okay. So if that is the case, this is equal to issue cost amount is 905. How much is the company tax rates in the question? What did you use when we calculated the NPV? Tax rate is 25%. Okay, tax rate is 25%. At 25%. Multiplied by discount factor of year 1. Somebody should give me discount factor of year 1 at 7.5%. What do you get? 1.075 raised to power 1 minus equal 0.930. 930. Therefore, what do you have? So this will give 905 multiplied by 0.25 multiplied by 0.93 equal 210. 210. Therefore, what's the PV? That's 695. 695 brackets. This represents the PV of financing. This is PV of issue costs. That's the PV of issue costs, 905. So I'm done with that. Move to the next one. We want to calculate PV of net subsidy. Calculating PV of net subsidy. Based on my explanation, to calculate the PV of net subsidy, there are 4 procedures you are going to carry out. The first procedure is to determine the subsidy amounts. I will then say subsidy amounts. Subsidy amounts. SA. How do you calculate subsidy amounts? Subsidy amount is calculated as the gross finance required multiplied by the proportion of subsidy. So the gross finance required is 22,636. We are told, according to the question, that 80% of the finance required, we are told that the government is excited about the project and has offered AHEL a subsidized loan of up to 80% of the investment funds needed at the beginning of the project. So the company needs 21,731 naira. Therefore, out of this, 80% will be financed through subsidized loan. So 80% of the gross finance required. This is equal to, I would then say 22,636 multiplied by 0.8. That's 18109. 18109 is the amount that will be financed through subsidized loan. All right then. So the second procedure is to determine savings on subsidy. Savings on subsidy. SOS in percentage. When you want to borrow, the amount at which you borrow, the cost of borrowing in the market is usually higher than the interest rates a company will pay through subsidized loan. Subsidized loan is a cheaper source of financing. Therefore, when you want to calculate the PV of net subsidy, you need to determine savings on subsidy in percentage. To get savings on subsidy, you pick the normal borrowing rate. The normal borrowing rate is the interest rates the company will pay on external financing. When you borrow from your bank, the interest rate you pay on that's your normal borrowing rate, minus the subsidy rate. The subsidy rate is the interest rate on this subsidized loan. Therefore, my savings on subsidy will then be equal to, I'll go to the question, what's my normal borrowing rate? We have calculated that before. The normal borrowing rate, we got 7.5%. Why is that again? Normal borrowing, yes, this is it here. Our normal borrowing rate is 7.5%. Okay. So I would then say 7.5% minus subsidy rates. Let us go and calculate interest rates on the subsidy. We are told that, according to the question, we are told that the interest rate on the subsidized loan is 200 basis points below AS borrowing rate. AS borrowing rate is 7.5%. So 200 basis point is the same thing as 2%. So 2% below 7.5, that's 5.5%. Therefore, my subsidy rate is 5.5%. 5.5%. So which is equal to 2%. 2% is the savings on subsidy. Then the next thing we need to do is to determine the net subsidy. Net subsidy, NS. So net subsidy is calculated as issue cost amounts multiplied by savings on subsidy multiplied by 1 minus tax rates. Therefore, my issue cost amounts, no, sorry, not issue cost amounts, subsidy amounts. So I intended to say subsidy amounts. Here is SA, subsidy amounts multiplied by savings on subsidy in percentage, then multiplied by 1 minus tax rates. Subsidies amount is 18,109 multiplied by savings of 2% multiplied by 1 minus tax rates. Tax rate is 25%, so we are supposed to account for 75%. Therefore, net subsidy would then be equal to, bring out your calculator, 18,109 multiplied by 0.02 multiplied by 0.075 equal, that's 21,272. Let me do it again. 18,109 multiplied by 0.02 multiplied by 0.75 equal, that's 272. Here is 272. So 272 is the net subsidy. Finally, we need to calculate the PV. PV of net subsidy. See the way we are breaking it down step by step. PV of net subsidy simply means the net subsidy multiplied by annuity factor. So net subsidy is 272 multiplied by annuity factor. To get the annuity factor, remember, we are using the normal borrowing rates as a discount rate for financing effect cash flow. Therefore, to get the annuity factor of 7.5%, I would then say 1.075 raised to power. The useful life of this project is 4 years. Raised to power 4 minus equal minus 1 equal divided by 0.075 equal. This is 3.349. I have 3.349. So at this stage, I'm not supposed to be telling you how to calculate annuity factor. So equal. I would then say 272 multiplied by 3.349 equal. That's 911. 911,000 naira is the PV of net subsidy. Notes. Notes, because we did not do, let me see whether we have working anywhere. No, we have done with our working previously. So, note, subsidy rates is equal to normal borrowing rate of 7.5 minus 200 basis points, because we are told that the interest rates on the subsidized loan is 200 basis points below the normal borrowing rates. Therefore, 7.5% minus 2%. This will give us 5.5%. So that is how we arrive at the 5.5% you are seeing there. Okay. Move on. The last one is to calculate PV of tax saved on interest. So calculating PV of tax saved on interest. PV of tax saved on interest. The first thing when you want to calculate the PV of tax saved on interest, the first thing you need to do is to calculate. The first thing you need to do is to accumulate all interest elements. We have debt financing. We also have subsidized loan. Therefore, what is the interest rates? I will say interest rates, interest expense rather, on normal borrowing. Equal to the gross finance required is 22,636. We are now told that out of this amount, 80% will be financed through subsidized loan. It means that the remaining 20% will be financed through normal borrowing. Therefore, multiply by 20%. What's the interest rates on the normal borrowing? 7.5%. Therefore, what's the interest expense on that? Then again, I will calculate interest expense on subsidy, which is equal to the 22,636, which is the gross finance required, multiplied by 80% of the subsidized loan, multiplied by interest rate of 5.5% for the subsidy. So equal. So what do you have? Or you're just waiting for me to provide the number? Prosper. 0.2 multiplied by 0.075. That's 340. Here is 340.
340.
Okay.
Next one is
22,636 multiplied by 0.8 multiplied by 0.055 equal 996. 996. So when you add the two together, what do you get? That's 1,336. So this represents the total interest expense. So like I said, the first thing when you want to calculate the PV of tax saved on interest, the first thing you need to do is to accumulate all interest elements. That is, what was the interest expense on the normal borrowing? What was the interest expense on the subsidized loan? Then you had the two of them together to get the total interest. I will then move to step 2. Step 2 is to calculate tax saved on interest. Okay? Tax saved on interest. To get the tax saved on interest, I would then say total interest multiplied by the company tax rates. Remember, anything that has to do with tax saved, you have to multiply with the company tax rates. Therefore, 1,336 multiplied by 25%. So tax saved is equal to 1,336 multiplied by 0.25. 334. So tax saved is 334. Finally, I need to calculate PV of tax saved. PV of tax saved on interest will be equal to tax saved multiplied by annuity factor. Equal 334 multiplied by 3.349. Our annuity factor we calculated previously under subsidized loan is 3.349. Here is it, 3.349. Okay. Therefore, I will then say 334 multiplied by 3.349 equal 1119. 1119. So this represents the PV of tax saved on interest. So we have calculated the PV. We have calculated the PV of issue cost to be 695. We have also calculated the PV of tax saved, PV of net subsidy to be 991. To be 991. Then we just calculated the PV of tax saved on interest to be 1,119,1119. So at this point, we need to calculate the PV of financing. So I would then say calculating PV of financing effects. PV of financing effect cash flow. Okay, figures in thousands. The first item is the PV of issue cost. We got 695,000. It's a cost. We also calculate PV of net subsidy. to be equal to, we got 911. 911. Then we calculated PV of tax saved. Tax saved on interest. We got 1,119. Finally, the PV of financing effects cash flow would then be equal to 1,119 plus 911 minus 695 equal 1335. 1335. So finally, I need to calculate the APB. Calculating APB. To calculate the APB, remember, APB is calculated as, APB is equal to base case NPV plus minus PV of financing effects cash flow. Okay, therefore, base case NPV, we got 1,060 plus 1,335. Therefore, APB is 2 plus 1060. That's 2395. 2395. That's it. I wouldn't say examiner is asking in the question. You are asked in the question to evaluate on financial grants whether AL should proceed with the project. The company should proceed because the project is financially viable. I would then say the company should proceed or should undertake the projects because it is financially viable, considering the positive APV of 2,395,000 naira. That's it. We are done with the question. Then number B, examiner is asking you to discuss the appropriateness of the evaluation method used and explain the assumption made in part A. So examiner just wants you to explain what is APV. Then how do you use APV to appraise a project? Then second part is for you to state all relevant assumptions. There are a series of assumptions we have made in the question. So examiner is asking you to discuss all of that. Then number C, provide examples of ethical issues that might affect capital investment decision and discuss the importance of such issues for strategic financial management. So for the B and C of the question, I'm going to forward to you the theoretical, I'm going to forward to you the notes, all right? So that in order to save time, okay? So that's for that. At this point, let me hear from you if you have any question for me before we move to another topic for the day. Any question so far?
Yes, sir. So I'm a little confused
Where?
on some of the calculations. During the calculation of this issue cost amount, right?
Yeah.
I got something like 0.905. but then you wrote 905 as an absolute figure. So I don't know, are we multiplying by 100 or is there any other calculation I didn't get?
Maybe you did not use the right. Let me go back to usual cost. So you are talking about this 905, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, do your calculator again. Yeah, bring out your calculator. 22,636 multiplied by 4%.
So that is 22.636.
It's not 22,636.
Okay.
It's 22,000, not points. Is it clear now?
Not yet, sir. Also, the PV of tax saved on issue cost.
Hold
I
on,
didn't
before
get
you
how.
move to the next, before you move to the tax save, this particular one that you said you got different answer. Is it clear now?
Okay, yes, sir, it is.
So which one is the next one?
PV of tax saved on issue cost in year one.
Okay, what about it?
Yeah, this one, yes, sir. I do not understand the calculation, sir.
In my explanation last time, in our last class, I explained that when you want to determine the PV of issue costs, there are two elements that will make up the PV of issue costs. One is the PV of issue cost amounts in year 0. Then 2 is the PV of tax saved on issue cost amounts in year 1 only. In year 1 only. This is because according to, I think, IAS 23, which is your borrowing cost, the interest rates on the interest rates on the loan borrow is capitalized. Now, when it comes to issue costs, the amount that the company incurred on those issue costs in raising the finance, because your issue costs will arise at the beginning of the period that the company is raising the finance. It is the net amount that the company will receive at the end of the day. Remember, I explained to you last time the examples of issue costs. One of them is marketing expenses, the cost the company will incur to promote the raising of the funds. That's number one. Then 2, the company will pay registration fee to Security and Exchange Commission. The company will also pay legal fee. Not only that, the company will also pay audit fee as well. If the financial statement of the company will need to be audited to ascertain the true financial status, okay, of the company. So all those expenses that the company will incur when raising the finance are called issue costs. So when you want to determine the PV of your issue costs, depending on how the finance will be raised. Remember, I explained to you last week. I said that issue costs are costs associated with underwriting and raising debt and equity capital. So when you now want to calculate your issue cost, PV of your issue cost, you are supposed to determine the PV of issue cost in year 0, because issue costs will arise at the beginning of the period that the company is raising the finance. So that's your year 0. So you're not going to then go to the question, how is this finance going to be raised? Is there equity? Is there debt? Is there any subsidized loan? So if in the question you are given equity, you are also told that you are told in the question that the finance will be raised through equity and debt. In that case, you are going to calculate issue cost amount on equity separately. You also calculate the issue cost on debt separately. All right. So once, like in this case, in this question now, we are told that the finance required will be raised through debt finance and the subsidized loan. So I don't need to waste my time since there is no equity financing. So to get the tax saved, after I've calculated the PV of issue cost in year 0, like I mentioned to you, the PV of issue cost in year 0 will be the same thing as your issue cost amount. So to now get the PV of tax saved on issue cost amounts in year 1 only, because tax debt has tax deductibility benefits. So there must be tax relieved on the issue cost amount in year one only. It's a given, it's a principle you must apply. So when you want to calculate the PV of tax saved on interest, on the issue cost amount in year one, so all you need to do is to just multiply the company tax rate on the issue cost amount, then you discount it. So that is what we have done. So the issue cost amount is 9,005. The company tax rate is 25%. Then discount factor of 7.5% at year one only will produce 0.930. So we go to 10. That's how we arrive at the net amount of 695. Prosper. Okay.
All right. Sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
So it's a given. When you look at your notes that I gave to you last week, you will see that. Let me even see. I think I wrote it down in this notes. I wrote it down for you when I was explaining it. PV of issue cost. Yes, look at it there. PV of tax saved. It's a given. You have to apply for that. PV of tax saved on issue cost amount. It's issue cost amount multiplied by company tax rates multiplied by discount factor at year one. Can you see? So it's a format that you have to apply when you want to calculate your PV on issue cost. I believe it's clear now.
Yes, I see. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So let's move on to another topic. So we are done with APV. Now, I need you, let me stop sharing this. Let me present. Yes, please. I need you to go and solve. Oh, it's not in this. Okay, I will send you an assignment that you are going to solve for me. Okay, so it's not in this one. No worries. Please remind me tomorrow in case I forget that the assignment I said I will share with you. Open to the new, the notes I just shared with you earlier today on a specific investment decision. Okay. So let me know if you can see my screen, please. Prosper, can you see it?
We can see it now.
All right,
Yes,
then.
sir. We can see it now.
It's okay. So under specific investment decision according to your syllabus, there is asset replacement decision. There is also lease and hire purchase. So we are going to take it one by one. Between now and the next class, we are going to be discussing specific investment decision. So let me just explain what asset replacement decision is all about. So under this particular topic, I will give you the introduction. Then we talk about classification, the types of replacements, the classification of assets, methods of determining optimal replacement strategy, the assumptions, limitations, and the underlying factors you must consider in replacement decision before we begin illustrations. So, what do you then understand by asset replacement decision? You see, when a company purchases non-current assets, for example, we have, when you say non-current assets, we have motor vehicle, machinery, plant and equipment. Plant and equipment. These are examples of non-current assets. So when a company purchases non-current assets and the asset is being put to use to generate revenue, a time will come in the future when the asset will become old and we need replacement. Therefore, management wants to know when and how should that asset be replaced at a later date in the future. That is what we want to discuss today. Therefore, asset replacements involve the process of determining the optimal replacement strategy to be adopted by an organization for the asset employed to generate revenue for the business. The decision is how often should the asset be replaced. This is because when an asset is being put to use for a specific period of time, the asset will need to be replaced when it becomes old. This is because when an asset is newly bought, the operating efficiency and the received value of the asset will be considerably high, while the maintenance cost will be relatively low. However, as replacement is deferred into the future, the asset will become problematic to maintain. The received value and the operating efficiency will drop significantly as a result of regular usage of the assets. Therefore, how do you then determine the optimal replacement strategy? Before we get to how to determine optimal replacement strategy to be adopted by an organization, you need to know what are the types of replacements. We have identical replacements. There is also non-identical replacements. The identical replacement will arise when an asset with similar characteristics is being replaced. For example, Toyota for Toyota, Hyundai for Hyundai, generator with generator of the same brand. So this is identical replacement. The non-identical replacement will occur when an asset is being replaced with a different one. All right? So what are the reasons for replacements? What are the reasons for replacements? There are basically two reasons. There are three key reasons for replacing an asset. One is age, two is operating efficiency, then three is technology. The first one, let's talk about age. When an asset is old and worn out, there will be need for the asset to be replaced because an old asset can cause injury or accidents. So the earlier the company replaces the asset, the better for the company. Then the second one is operating efficiency. When the operating efficiency of an asset has declined, it will lower productivity and quality of products. At that point in time, it will be necessary for the company to replace the assets. The third one is technology. When a new asset with high operating efficiency, better quality is available in the market, there will be need for the company to replace the old one with the new technology. So in order not to become laggard, if the company's competitors are already using the new technology, it is important for the company to integrate or to purchase the new technology in order not to be laggard in the industry. Laggard means you are following. You are supposed to be a leader in your industry. So when you are laggard, it means you are behind. All right. So these are the three reasons for replacements. There are basically two classifications of an asset. We have assets that face suddenly, and we also have assets that face gradually. The assets that face suddenly are assets with insignificant cost. For example, bulb. Okay, bulb, tire, or tire tube, or tube of a tire. These are assets that does not cost much, but the consequential effect of failure is what the company wants to guide against. Imagine having a meeting in your boardroom or having a meeting with a VIP, and all of a sudden, the bulb just went off. It's an embarrassment to the management, to the CEO, or to the management team. You don't want such a thing to happen to you, all right? So that's why it is important for you to establish, for the company to establish a policy in relation to asset replacement strategy to be adopted. Also, imagine one is driving on the expressway and the tire just burst. God forbid. You can imagine what could happen, the consequential effect of that failure. So company wants to guide against it. That's why we are learning this. All right. Now, the second classification or category of asset is the asset that face gradually. The asset that face gradually are the non-current assets that is being put to use to generate goods or to render services. So this kind of assets deteriorate with time as a result of regular usage. They become wear and tear. So once the asset is old, of course, there will be need for the company to replace the assets. Examples of the asset that face gradually include the motor vehicle, all right, the plant and machinery, the equipment, and all of that. So, yes, please go and read about the assumptions because of time. Go and read about the assumptions, all the underlying assumptions for replacements. Then you also read about the reasons. I've already mentioned the reasons for replacement, but go through the material and read about it. Read about the determinants. Okay, read about the determinants for asset replacement, then the limitation as well. Read the limitation. So the next thing I will talk about is the method of determining optimal replacement strategy. So what are the methods of determining optimal replacement strategy? There are basically three methods of determining optimal replacement strategy. One is the annual equivalent value method. Two, lowest common multiple method. Then three, finite horizon. So the interesting thing is that any of the three methods above will produce the same optimal replacement strategy. However, at all times, please always use the annual equivalent value method. Always use the annual equivalent value of cost method because it is more straightforward. The finite horizon is only used where there is inflation. All right, where there's inflation. And one of the assumptions of replacement strategy is that taxation and inflation are ignored. So if taxation and inflation are ignored, so why are you now using finite horizon when you say taxation and inflation are ignored? Because you use the finite horizon. The finite horizon method is more appropriate where there's inflation. But in any case, at all time, always use the annual equivalent value or cost method. Therefore, When you want to determine the optimal replacement strategy using annual equivalent value or cost method, there are about 3 procedures you are supposed to carry out. Okay, you are supposed to carry out. The first procedure is to calculate NPV for each replacement cycle. We calculate NPV for each replacement cycle. For this purpose, as you are moving to the following year, you are supposed to be cumulating or repeating the net cash flow. Now, when you want to calculate the NPV for each replacement cycle, you go into the question, you identify if you are given selling price and variable cost. Once you have selling price and variable cost, so you need nobody to tell you that you are supposed to calculate contribution. So once you get your contribution for each period for the respective years, then you also go into the question if you are given maintenance or running costs. If you are given maintenance costs, so it is important for you to just find your net cash flow, because if you are calculating your NPV, you use contribution, you also use your maintenance cost. As you are proceeding to the following year, you are going to repeat the contribution and the maintenance cost in the first year in year 2, plus the one in year 2. As you are moving to year 3, you repeat the contribution and the maintenance cost of year 1 and the one of year 2 plus the one of year 3. So by the time you begin to do all of that, it will become voluminous and too cumbersome. And that's why it is important for you from the beginning, calculate your net cash flow. Okay, you calculate the net cash flow. Your net cash flow in this case will then be your contribution that you have calculated, the contribution minus the maintenance cost. Okay, so the contribution minus the maintenance cost, because both the contribution and the maintenance cost will be affected with the same discount factor for the same year. So why are you now separating them? So just find your net cash flow and you move on from there. Okay, so it's very important. It's very important. I repeat again, when you want to determine the optimal replacement strategy using annual equivalent value or cost method, the first thing you need to do is to calculate NPV for each replacement cycle. Year 1, NPV of year 1 separate, NPV of year 2 separate, NPV of year 3 separate, on and on like that until you assess the useful life of the project, of the assets. Then when you are calculating, before you calculate your NPV, you will need to determine the net cash flow. And I said that if in the question you are given selling price and variable cost, please just go ahead and calculate your contribution. Then once you are done with your contribution, you also need to calculate your net cash flow. So the difference between contribution and maintenance cost will give you the net cash flow. Then step 2, you need to calculate annual equivalent value or cost using this formula. The annual equivalent value or cost represents NPV, the ratio of NPV to annuity factor. I repeat, the annual equivalent value or cost represents the ratio of NPV to the annuity factor. So the NPV you have calculated for each year, you are going to divide it with the annuity factor of the respective years. All right. So that will give you this. So if your NPV is positive, it is annual equivalent value. But if your NPV is negative, it is annual equivalent cost. Therefore, the third step is for you to make a decision. When you want to make a decision, if it is positive NPV, that positive NPV represents annual equivalent value. So if it is annual equivalent value, you are supposed to select the highest annual equivalent value from the among the options available. But if your NPV is negative, then you are supposed to select the lowest annual equivalent cost. I repeat, if your NPV is positive, you select the highest annual equivalent value. But if your NPV is negative, you select the lower annual equivalent cost. So these are the things you need to do when you want to determine the optimal replacement strategy. using annual equivalent value or cost method. So don't forget what I said. Please go ahead, go and read about the limitation, assumptions, the underlying factors of replacement, all the theoretical aspects of asset replacement. Please go and read them through. They are all in this material. So at this point, we need to have illustration. Let's have illustration. Let me stop sharing this. Before that, yes, I need one of you to read for us. Who will read for us? Debbie, can you read? Debbie? Prosper, are you there?
I'm here, sir.
Please read.
Okay, illustration 1. Telemundo PLC is a manufacturing company trading Brazil, a country in which there have been virtually no inflation for many years, and in which none is expected in the future. The company produces a wide range of products, one of which is the Samba, which requires the use of a special machine. The company presents policy at the end of its fiscal productive life of 4 years. The directors are now considering whether
Prosper, I think your network is bad a little bit.
machine more frequently than once every 4 years in view of the fact that its productive capacity. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, take it again from
Okay.
the company's
Can you hear me,
present
sir?
policy. Yes, take it again from the company's present policy.
Okay. The company's present policy is to replace each machine at the end of its fiscal productive life of 4 years. The directors are now considering whether to replace the machines more often than once every 4 years, in view of the fact that its productive capacity declines as it gets older and potential sales of Samba are lost. There is sufficient demand for the company's Samba to justify the purchase of a second machine. Telemundo PLC charges a selling price. It is able to sell up to 500,000 per annum. Variable costs, excluding machine depreciation and running costs, amounted to 4 kobo per Samba. Details of productive capacities and running costs, including maintenance of the machines, are given below. So should I proceed?
Annual running costs.
Okay. Annual running costs are independent of the number of Samba produced. The directors wish to continue their present policy of always buying new machines at a price of 60,000 naira each. Trade-in value of the machines are 40,000 naira for 1-year-old machine, 25,000 naira for 2-year-old machine, 10,000 naira for 3-year-old machine, and nil for 4-year-old machine. The company provides depreciation on all its assets using the straight line method. All costs and revenue are paid or received in cash at the end of the year to which they relate, with the exception of the initial price of the machine, which is paid immediately on purchase. Telemundo PLC has an annual cost of capital of 10%. You are required to determine optimum replacement strategy for Telemundo PLC. Ignore taxation.
Thank you very much, Prosper. You can see from this requirement that you are told to determine the optimum replacement strategy for Telemundo PLC. So what this shows that you are supposed to determine the replacement strategy for the company. So if that is the case, let me quickly stop sharing this and move to the working notes. Okay. Yes. So again, you can see examiner will never ask you to use any method, whether it's annual equivalent value, lowest common multiple method, or finite, or examiner will never ask you. The bottom line is that you just ask to determine the optimal replacement strategy. That's what the examiner will ask you to do. But in any case, in solving this question, I don't need to waste time. The name of this company is Telemundo. Telemundo PLC. So I would then say determining optimum replacement strategy. That's what we want to do. So for you to be able to do this, the first thing first you need to do, remember, when you are using annual equivalent value method, the first thing you need to do is to calculate the NPV for each replacement cycle. Therefore, I would then say replace every year. So if you want to replace the machine every year, then what is the NPV of year one? So we are going to calculate NPV. Normal way you do it. Description of item, cash flow, discount factor. What's the cost of capital from the question? Let's check. Yes, cost of capital of 10%. That's the cost of capital of 10%. So at 10%, then we calculate the present value. Year zero, initial cost of the assets. Let's go back to the question. How much is the initial cost of the assets? We are told in the paragraph after the table that annual running costs are independent of the number of SAMBA produced. The directors wish to continue their present policy of always buying new machines at a price of 60,000 naira each. Therefore, the initial cost of the machine is 60,000. 60,000. So the next thing we need to do is to determine the net cash flow for year one. You need to go and calculate net cash flow because in this question we have selling price. We also have variable cost, that's a maintenance cost. Therefore, we need to go and calculate net cash flow. So page 1, page 2, page 3 would be for our workings. So I would then say workings. Working number 1, I want to determine contribution. The reason why we are calculating contribution is because in the question we are given selling price and variable cost. So, but if in the question, all what you are given are just costs, there is nothing like a selling price, no variable cost. I mean, no contribution. What you are given is just maintenance, the initial cost of the asset, the maintenance cost, then the received value. In that case, it's going to be annual equivalent cost. So there will be no need for you to go and be calculating any contribution. You don't even have the information to calculate your contribution. So in this case, we are told that selling price is 12 kobo. That's 0.12 minus variable cost of 4 kobo, 0.04. Therefore, variable cost contribution is equal to 8 kobo, 0.08. That's variable cost per unit. Sorry, contribution per unit. So we need to determine total contribution. total contribution. Because we have different number of units, so to get our total contribution, we are going to multiply that. So I have column for year, units of Samba, contribution per unit, then total contribution. Okay. Year one. I'll go back to the question, what's the useful life of the project? 4 years. 4 years is the useful life of the project. So year one, year two, year three, year four. What's the unit of Samba in the first year? 500, 500, 400, 400. 500,000, 500, 400, 400. So contribution per unit is 8 kobo. So you multiply that to get the total contribution. Here will be 40,000, 40,000, 32,000, 32,000. Now that we have calculated the contribution per year, so the next thing I need to do is to go back to the question if I'm given running costs. Yes, examiner give us running costs of 6,000, 6,575, 9,000 for the respective years. So since I have running costs, so there is no need for me to be using contribution, Therefore, I need to go and calculate net cash flow. NCF. To get my net cash flow, I will create a column for year, column for contribution, column for running costs, then column for net cash flow. Because my net cash flow will be equal to contribution minus maintenance costs. The reason why we have to do it this way is because of the fact that both the contribution and the running costs will be affected with the same discount factor. So instead of doing it separately, why don't you just find the net amount? So the first year running cost is 6,065. 6,000. Six five 7,5, then 9,000. So let's find the net amounts. Here will be 34,000. Here will be 33,500. Here will be 24,500, I think. Prosper, what do you have? Then here will be 23,000. So now that I have the net cash flow, I can then proceed to calculate the NPV of the respective years. So year one net cash flow is 34,000 naira. So here will be 34,000. Discount factor at 10% for year one, 0.909. Prosper. Fidelis. Where are you guys? Give me numbers. Multiply. In that same year one, we have scrap value. we are given a trade-in value. Trade-in value is the same thing as scrap value. So what's the scrap value for year one according to the question? We are told that trade-in value of the machine are 40,000 naira for 1 year old machine. So 40,000 multiplied by 0.909. So what do you have as present value, please?
30906.
30906. Okay.
36360.
36366.
360.
Yes, please.
360. Like this. Okay. So we are done with year one replacements. Let's move to year two.
Yes, please, sir.
Yes.
Sir, please, can you go back to the running cost? You were a bit fast, so I didn't really grab everything.
I was fast.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before then, oh yeah. What's the MPV? Give me the MPV first. That will be
7266.
7266. All right then. So you said I was a bit fast on the running costs.
Yes, sir.
Oh, oh yeah, now. Which one? Oh yeah, now talk to me. Which area do you want me to explain again? Is it clear to you now?
Sir,
Hello?
are the running costs given in the question? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Did they give us running cost in the question?
He's there now. Running cost is given to us. In the question, you are told in the paragraph after the table, you are told that trading value, sorry, before then, if you look at the table, after your production capacity, you are given running cost of 6,000 for year one, 6,500 for year two, 7,500 for year three, then 9,000 for year four. Have you seen it?
Yes, sir.
So the running cost is given. So for you to now get your net cash flow, you less running costs from the annual contribution. You can only do that if they are affected with the same discount factor. So since the same discount factor we apply for each of them, so it's better for you to just find the net cash flow. And that's what we have done. Is it clear now?
So if they don't have the same discount factor, what do you do?
They are going to have. That's not how they are going to have, because the asset must have maintenance costs. Remember what I explained to you earlier when I was giving the introduction, that the earlier the replacement of an asset, the higher the resale value and the operating efficiency. However, the lower would be the maintenance cost. However, the longer the deferment of replacement of an asset, the higher the maintenance cost, and the lower will be the resale value and the operating efficiency. So you can see that in the table given to us, the running cost given to us, you can see is increasing year on year from 6,000 to 6,500, from 6,500 to 7,500, from 7,500 to 9,000. So it will continue to increase until the asset cannot function again. Okay? So replace every 2 years. Replace every 2 years. So if you want to replace this machine in the next 2 years, then what will be the NPV for that year? So let's quickly calculate that. Cash flow, discount factor at 10%, then the PV. Okay. Year zero. Initial cost of the asset is 60,000 naira. It's a cash outflow. So the present value of that is 60,000. In year one, remember what I told you. You are supposed to be, when you are calculating your NPV for the following year and the subsequent one, you are going to be cumulating the net cash flow of the previous years. So in this case, the net cash flow of year one will be repeated in year two. So which is 34,000. Yeah, 34,000. 0.909. Here is 30,906. Then you are going to add the net cash flow of year two. What's the net cash flow of year two as calculated below? Net cash flow of year two is 33,500. Okay, let's go and incorporate that. 33,500, 0.826. So give me the present value, please. What's the present value? Yes.
27,671.
27,671. Then what's the trading value? Describe value for year two. We are told that 25,000 naira for 2-year-old machine, 25,000. So here will be 25,000, 0.826. What do you have as PV? Yes. 20. I can't hear you.
2650.
650.
Yes, sir.
So what's our NPV? Yes. What do you have?
19,227.
19.
227.
27. So that represents the NPV of replacing it every 2 years. Move to the next one, which is year 3. Replace every 3 years. So this means that if the asset has 10 years useful life, you are going to calculate 10 different NPVs. So here, item, cash flow, discount factor at 10%. Okay, year 0, year 1, year 2, then year 3. Initial costs, net cash flow, net cash flow. Then we have trading value for year 3. So the first year is 60,000 multiplied by 1, 60,000. Net cash flow in the first year is 34,000, 33,500. Then what's the net cash flow in the third year? 24,500. 24,500 is the net cash flow in the third year. Okay. 24,500. What's the trading value for year 3? We are 10,000 for 3 years. Old machine. For 3-year old machine, 10,000 naira. So here will be 10,000. You can see as we are proceeding to the following year, we are repeating the net cash flow of the previous years. So this is what I mean by you'll be accumulating or repeating your net cash flow. So here is 909,826, 751, 751. So here is 30,906. Here is 27,671. Then what's the PV of the 3rd year? Pardon?
18400.
400. Okay. So what's our NPV then? Yes.
24487.
Did you say 34?
24
24?
487.
487. So finally, let's calculate the NPV for year 4 replacements. Replace every 4 years. Okay. Year 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We are told in the question that the trading value for the 4th year is nil, nothing. So ignore. Here is the initial cost is 60,000 multiplied by 1, 60,000. Net cash flow. Net cash flow. Here is 34,000. 33,500. 24,500. What's the net cash flow for the 4th year?
2000.
Pardon?
2300.
23,000. Here is 23,000. So 0.909826 751 683. So here is 30,906 27,000 671 24,000. Is it 24? 18,400. Okay. So what's the NPV of the 4th year, please?
2709.
15.
709.
Please, I'm struggling to hear you.
709.
709. So what's the NPV then?
32, 680.
36,680.
32, 680. 80.
32,
680.
680. Okay.
80.
86. Like this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then. Now that we have computed NPV for each replacement cycle, so the next thing we need to do is to calculate annual equivalent value or cost. So you can see in this question, in our solution, we calculated all our NPVs are positive. So it means that we are supposed to calculate annual equivalent value. Annual equivalent value. And annual equivalent value is NPV divided by annuity factor. Okay, so if that is the case, for a proper presentation, I will create a column for year, column for workings, then I will create a column for annual equivalent value. So year 1, year 2, year 3, then year 4. Okay. So to get the annual equivalent value, we divide the NPV of each respective years with the annuity factor. In year 1, NPV of year 1 is 30, no, is 7266. NPV of year 1 is 7266. So I would then say 7266 divided by annuity factor of year 1, which is 0.909. NPV of year 2 is 19,000, 2 something something, 227. 227 divided by annuity factor of year 1 to 2, which is 1.736. NPV of year 3 is 24,487. 24,487 divided by annuity factor of year 1 to 3 at 10%. That's 2.487. NPV of year 4, 32,686. 32,686 divided by annuity factor of year 1 to 4 at 10%, will give us 3.170. So somebody should give me the annual equivalent value. Yes. What's the annual equivalent value for year 1? Yes.
For year 2, 10311.
For year what?
Year 2,
Year 2.
4, 4. The last
Year
year,
4. It says what?
10311.
Okay.
For year 1,
Yes.
7993.
Okay.
For year 3, 9846.
9846.
For year 2,
Yep.
11,075.
0.75. So remember, when I was explaining to you, I said that when you want to make a decision, if your NPV is positive, you select the highest annual equivalent value. And I also said if your NPV is negative, you select the lowest annual equivalent cost. So in this case, since our NPV is positive, we have calculated annual equivalent value. And at that point, the highest annual equivalent value occurred in year 2. Therefore, the assets, the machine should be replaced every year. I would then say the machine should be replaced every 2 years, considering the highest annual equivalent value of 11,075 naira. That's it. That's it. That's what the examiner asks us to do. So this is where we are going to call it a day. In our next class, we are going to complete asset replacements by solving additional illustrations. Then thereafter, we'll move to lease and hire purchase by the grace of God. All right. So please let me know if you have any question for me on what we have done today. Any question for me? Abu, are you on? You just came to register. You are just a placeholder.
Not really,
said
not really,
anything.
sir.
You have not said anything since, including Zainab.
I was giving you figure.
Are you the one giving me
What?
figure?
I also
I
gave.
thought it's Prosper and Debbie. It's okay.
Zena, I could not hear your voice today, Jerry.
I thought as much. It's okay.
Like
All right,
twice.
it's all right. So, in the absence of no further question, at this point, so I want to call it a day, and we're going to meet again by the grace of God next time, when we shall be concluding this particular topic. All right. Thank you guys for your time and understanding. I will see you again next time by the grace of God. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Prosper.
sir.
All right, Abu, take care.